Hey y'all, it's Care. Welcome to my almost favorite books of the year video. Today we're going to be talking about 10 books. I'm going to be ranking them from number 20 to number 11 of my favorite books of the year. We're leading up to the top 10, which quite frankly, I could not be more excited about. I'm holding out just a little bit longer. I'm trying to finish up just a few books to see if they're going to squeeze their way into the top 10. I don't know how that will affect the top 20 ranking, but the books we're going to talk about today, I still highly recommend, and we're going to talk about them in just a second. But first, I would love to thank the sponsor of today's video, Ana Luisa Jewelry. If you're not new to this channel, then you've heard of Ana Luisa. I continuously choose to work with this brand, one, because I absolutely love their jewelry, but also because I really believe in their mission. This is an ethical and a sustainable jewelry company that you can really feel good about wearing, not only because it's beautiful, but also because they use recycled materials whenever possible, and they create small batch designs that are truly kind to the earth. All the jewelry is carbon neutral, which is wonderful for the environment, and it always comes in these adorable eco-friendly pouches. I never throw these away, by the way. I love reusing them as either like little coin purses or even to store my jewelry in when I travel. Just from looking at the pieces that I'm currently wearing, you can probably pick up on the vibe of this brand. They're definitely operating on a less is just enough philosophy. I really love how all their jewelry is simple yet striking, and I really love how versatile these pieces are in particular. This time around, I really went for pieces that I feel like I could wear with any outfit that I own. I really do wear these pieces, well, not these in particular, but I wear Ana Luisa jewelry every day to work because I feel like it complements my business casual get-ups so well. Tonight I'm wearing my new willow necklace. I really love this stacked effect. I love the bead on this chain right here. I feel like it's really simple, but it's such a cute little design to go with this other simple disc on the second chain. I also have on these low medium earrings. I love the size of this hoop, actually. I feel like it goes with any outfit that I have, and I feel like it matches the willow necklace so well. And then my favorite piece of the evening is this Kona adjustable ring. I absolutely love the Ana Luisa adjustable rings because I can wear it on any single finger that I have. Ana Luisa is still currently running their biggest sale of the year. Buy one piece of jewelry, get one 60% off. So make sure you check out the description of this video, click on the link down there, go shop. It would make a wonderful holiday gift for anyone who likes jewelry. You can't go wrong with these pieces. Again, buy one, get one 60% off. Thank you so much, Ana Luisa, for sponsoring this video. Now, on to the books. I couldn't be more excited right now. I'm brimming at the edge with excitement, okay? So I originally got this idea because I went to make my top 10 of the year. I don't want to go crazy with that video. I don't want to stretch it out to my top 15 or top 20. But what I found was I had so many honorable mentions that could be interchangeable with a lot of those books that are in my top 10 favorites of the year. So I decided, what if I just extended the video, okay, and do books 11 through 20 and call it my almost favorite books of the year. I think we all know where I'm going with this. We're gonna start at number 20, we're gonna make it down to number 11, and it's all gonna be leading up to, I think, next week's video, which is the top 10. Let's go ahead and get started, okay? I'm so excited. Number 20 of 2021. The number 20 book is Leaving Atlanta by Tayari Jones. This was one of the first books I read this year. I think I read it back in January. And it is still unlike anything that I've ever read before. While this genre, I would categorize it as just literary fiction, it has kind of a nonfiction / true crime element because it is a fictionalized version of the very real Atlanta child murders that happened in Atlanta, Georgia back in the 1990s? Is it? Whoa, was it the 90s? I think so. Let's Google that. The murders actually ranged between 1979 and 1981. This book is told in 3 different parts from the perspective of children who lived in Atlanta at this time. So children are going missing in Atlanta, and we're getting to hear about it from their classmates, from their friends, and just from the community that this is affecting. So we're seeing all of the anxiety that is affecting these children, but what's really interesting to me is that, for instance, in part 1, we have one child's parents who are going through a divorce and how that is affecting her. This divorce is as real to her as these murders are, as they should be. A child cannot possibly begin to process events in her life like this, and I think that it was a super interesting and heartbreaking exploration of these children's minds. I don't think this one is going to be for everybody. It is really slow. I don't want to try to bait people into reading this by like giving it that true crime tag, because I will say these Atlanta child murders are definitely the backdrop for these literary stories. But again, it is definitely in my top 20 of the year. I think it's a really important story that I just don't hear enough people talking about. Number 19 is The Retreat by Mark Edwards. One thing that you're definitely going to notice about this list, if you follow me on Goodreads, which my link is in the description of the video if you would like to go check me out there. I love accepting everyone's friend requests and seeing what everyone else is reading. But my point is, you are going to see some 3-star books on this list, and that's just gonna have to be okay, because when I finish reading a book, I immediately rate it and review it in my mind, and that's kind of how I do things. It's how things work best for me. But then at the end of the year, when I'm looking back on what my favorite books of the year were, sometimes that's a 3-star book. Don't judge me, I'm just telling you the breakdown of this video. So this, I think I probably rated it around a 3 or 3.5 when I finished it, but I think about it all the time. This was definitely a thriller, and it's by an author who I think is quite popular, but I just haven't read anything else from besides this one. This is about a horror author who is trying to gain some inspiration. He goes out to this kind of secluded type writer's retreat. Once he gets out there, he does meet other writers who are there to write and, you know, spend the retreat with him. But he becomes intrigued by the woman who runs this retreat, and he soon finds out that years ago, her daughter went missing and her husband drowned in this body of water that's out behind the house where they're all staying. But the kicker is, this woman thinks that her daughter is still alive. The body was never found, but most people think she was kind of presumed dead. But this mother will not give up, and then spooky things start happening at this retreat in this house, like unexplained music, sounds, voices, things like that, where you're thinking, is this a ghost thing going on, or is something else unexplained going to be revealed? It was really cool. It took a twist kind of early on, which I love it when a writer can do that in a nice, like, in a good way. I don't know how else to put that. Sometimes if a reveal happens too early, readers will lose interest, but mine was more like, oh my gosh, where could this possibly go from here? I had to know. If I'm gonna be critical, I will say I feel like there was some unnecessary romance, also maybe some unnecessary background going on, definitely some red herrings, but I did really have fun reading it. And like I said, it's one I think about all the time, and I just can't not mention it in my top 20 of the year. Number 18 is gonna be Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. This is one that I 100% should have read last year. It was a 5-star prediction for me, and although I rated it somewhere between 4 and 4.5 this year, it's another one that I just think about all the time. These characters have stayed in my head, and I finished this book months ago. Basically, this book is following 2 different women. One is white, one is black. So the young black woman that we're following is a nanny, and one night she's asked to take the young white child who she nannies to the grocery store. Not gonna give anything away, but she's asked to do this. She goes, and then something happens at the store that is kind of scandalous, like low-key scandalous. It shouldn't have been, but it was. And then the other part of the story is this white woman who is the mother of the child who is being nannied. So of these 2 women, one is the employer, the other is the employee. There are a lot of exciting aspects to the plot, but this is mostly a character-driven story, and I feel like I was really craving something character-driven this year. I read a lot of thrillers, a lot of horror, and this was just that nice literary fix I was looking for. I would definitely say the main theme of this book is performative activism, and why do we stand up for things? You know, it made you take a look inside of yourself and think, okay, these are my feelings and my stance on a certain topic. Now, why do I feel that way? Is it because I want to look cool and I want to be on the right side of history, or is it because I really truly care about these issues. Even though it was slow, it was a pretty quick read. We had those multiple stories going on. I wanted to see how everything connected, and I just thought it was a really great time, and I highly, highly recommend it to everybody. Next is the last weird one on the list, I swear, because from here on out, it's gonna be thriller, it's gonna be horror books. But I have to mention Convenience Store Woman. I don't even know how to classify this one. I guess it's just like a contemporary or a literary story. But it's about this woman who works in a convenience store, and she is super content with her life. She probably could want more for herself, but she's lived her entire adult life training to be the best convenience store woman she could be, possibly. So why should she have to go out and strive for something greater because someone else tells her that her job isn't fulfilling? Like, who gets to decide that? Who gets to make that choice in her life of if she is living up to her full potential? This woman likes working in a convenience store. She likes feeling like she's a cog in the wheel of society. She likes feeling like her job matters. I think a lot of the reason I love this book so much is because the personality of this woman reminds me a lot of myself. To be perfectly honest, without being too specific, one time I left a job in Atlanta in a high-rise building, you know, fancy office, fancy everything, LaCroix and a little mini fridge, I'm sorry. Anyway, literally to move to my hometown and work in public service. And I'm not saying that because it's like, oh, that's so noble. I'm just saying I really identified with this character wanting to feel like she was good at something and like her work mattered. And my whole point with that is just take this recommendation with a grain of salt. I think I love it so much because I feel so connected, but I also think it's a really good story. And I remember one of the only other videos that I've ever mentioned this book in, I remember that I got a lot of comments that other readers really enjoyed this one too. So just in case you hadn't heard of it yet, or if you had and you weren't sure about it, this one is so short. I actually listened to the audiobook for this one and would recommend that form of reading. I really did think that this one was short but impactful and something that I'm not ever going to forget. Moving on. Okay, now we're getting into what I feel like is gonna be the meat of the video. Number 16 is The Night Swim by Megan Golden. This was recommended so highly and so frequently to me this year. Actually, my friend Jess from Books Past Bedtime gifted me this book. I read it the same week that she sent it to me, and I really, really loved it. This is a really good example of one of those booktube made me read it type books that is absolutely worth all of the hype that it has received. The story is following a podcaster who in her latest season of her podcast has decided to cover an ongoing rape trial that's eerily similar to the very real life case between Brock Turner and Chanel Miller. Quick side note, Know My Name by Chanel Miller is maybe one of the best books I've ever read in my life. It is nonfiction, it is a memoir, and Brock Turner is the Stanford swimmer who sexually assaulted Chanel Miller, and that case was highly televised and publicized, and you probably know what I'm talking about. So if that case is something that is close to your heart, then definitely 1000% I think that you would enjoy reading this book. Not because it is an enjoyable read, but because I felt like there were parts that were therapeutic. It's very painful, it's very hard to read, but it can also be cathartic to read a fictionalized version of something and see some type of, like, I don't want to spoil anything, like I don't want to say like fictionalized justice or anything like that, but I think with these cases being so similar, the fiction and the real case, it was just interesting to read Golden's spin on things. What I also really liked about this book is we were not just following that one trial, we also are trying to solve something that happened a while ago, a long time ago, and I love how the stories ended up coming together. I feel like most of the time my favorite books either are super simple and just perfectly executed, or they're like really convoluted and difficult to understand and you've got to like piece things together. And I feel like this book was a mix of those two things. I never felt confused, but I also never felt bored. I think The Night Swim is something that is definitely worth your time, especially if you like mixed media in your books, because we do have the podcast element going on, but also if you like legal thrillers, because we have a lot of great courtroom scenes going on here that I really really enjoyed. Coming in at number 15, we have The Patient. I think I might have talked about this book a little bit too much this year, but if you've not read it yet and you like horror, you have to check it out. It is so incredibly short, and I feel like the format, or like the way this story is told, is really unique. We start things out on this internet forum, and we have an entry from a doctor, or someone who used to be a doctor, or a psychotherapist. I can't remember exactly what the terminology is, but he's talking about how he used to work with pretty much the most dangerous patient in the world. So we immediately are transported back in time to learn about how this man came to work at a hospital and how he came to work with this super dangerous man who was driving the other doctors and the other patients at this place absolutely insane. So as we're learning the backstory of this dangerous patient and we're getting to see these sessions between doctor and patient, we also are getting these entries from the present, so we know, okay, this doctor makes it out alive, right? Like, he's writing these entries. So it just really kept me turning the page, because I was like, what is the twist gonna be in this book? We know this guy makes it. And I also just found this doctor to be unlikable, which also kept me reading, because I love unlikable characters. I was still rooting for him, even though I thought he was super pretentious. I thought his head was huge. Because this one was so short, I do unfortunately need to stop the review and my pitch for it there, because I don't want to give anything else away. But that was one of my favorite horror stories of the year. Next is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I just knew from the second that this cover was revealed that I was gonna absolutely love this story, because we have that snowy, isolated setting. I didn't read enough of that this year. I'm gonna work on it a little bit more in December and January while it's still cold outside. Well, it's still like 70 degrees in Georgia, but you know what I mean. I really was surprised by how much I enjoyed this read. Rock, Paper, Scissors starts out with this married couple going to celebrate their 10-year anniversary out in the middle of nowhere. They're going out to this snowy chapel, and on their drive up there, we find out that the husband suffers from something called face blindness, so he can't recognize his own wife. He has had to learn to recognize people by their hair and what they smell like and what they sound like. He can't visually recognize faces. Okay. Also, we learn that the wife is kind of hiding something from him. She's being a little sneaky, a little suspicious, but also he is too. So we've got these two people who just straight up are not getting along, about to go out in the snow in the middle of nowhere and try to spend time together. So that's most of the story, but we are, with each chapter, we're getting these little letters in between the chapters that the wife has written on each anniversary. So like I said, they're going up to celebrate, I think, their 10th anniversary. So we start with year 1 and the letter that the wife wrote to her husband after year 1 of marriage. And so we're leading up to year 10 to see, oh my gosh, they used to be so in love. What happened here? This book had some wild plot twists. I don't think that there is any way to see this coming. I heard that I was gonna be shocked, and I feel like I spent too much of the book trying to figure out what the twist was instead of just sitting and enjoying the reading experience. So definitely just try to sit back and relax. I don't know if you're gonna guess this one, but when it all started unfolding, I was like, what is happening? It was just keeping the wheels in my mind turning. So I really highly recommend this thriller. Number 13, we have The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Don't look at the Goodreads for this. I think I gave it 3 stars when I first finished it, because I thought it was too long, and I just sometimes stuff like that will just put me off of a book. This honestly was about 100 pages too long. I'm not afraid to say it, but I think about it all the time. I think about the horror and the gross, gruesome scenes that I read in this book. I don't want to say every day, but maybe every day. It was nasty. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires takes place in South Carolina in the past, a few decades ago. It starts out following this pretty strict book club, but they're reading really boring books that nobody wants to read. And so from that book club, a few of the women break off and form their own book club where they're gonna read true crime books and vampire books and just things that women shouldn't have been reading in that day and age. They were just being rebellious little ladies. Long story short, a man moves into their neighborhood who can't be out in the sunlight, and he's super mysterious, and he's showing up in old photographs, and he's a vampire. That's not a spoiler. That's not a spoiler. Don't get mad at me. But yeah, and they were like, hey, do you want to join our book club? And he's like, yeah, I'm in. But the problem is from there, he's not like a cool vampire. He's like a murderer who is murdering children and preying on them, assaulting them, violently hurting people, but also sexually assaulting kids, and it's a lot. To bring it back down to a serious note, there are just so many trigger warnings for this book. I wasn't expecting them. I'm not particularly sensitive to anything, but this book was a lot to take in. There's a lot of sexual assault in this book, and I think there are great conversations around it. And I think, I mean, I hate to say like, oh, it's done well. Like, it's horrible to read. But I feel like if it's gonna be in a book, then we tackled these themes, the author addressed them, and I feel like he also did a good job of processing them through the mind of the women in this book. Okay. And just what I'm trying to say is this book was a lot, but I think about it all the time, and it was one of my favorite books of the year. Coming in at number 12, we have the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. So I read all 3 of these books this year. So we have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Good Girl, Bad Blood, and As Good as Dead. The only book from this series that I rated 5 stars was book 3, As Good as Dead. So I guess I'll keep that one up on the screen. But I didn't want to like put that one in as like one of my favorite books of the year by itself, because I had such a wonderful and beautiful reading experience with each of these books. I'm just gonna tell you the gist of this series because I can't tell you what book 3 is about in particular because spoilers for books 1 and 2. So A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is about this high school senior named Pip who decides to make her senior capstone project a podcast about a cold case murder that happened in her town, and it really affected her high school and her classmates. So once she starts investigating the cold case, she starts to see that like who was kind of blamed for the case and people who were tied up in this thing, just that everything was not what it seemed. So she just becomes hell-bent on trying to figure out what actually happened here. So from there, she creates this widely successful podcast that wasn't just for her senior project. Like, it gained so much popularity. I'm not gonna tell you what happens there, but book 2 was just a continuation of that story and continuation of the podcast. And then book 3 does the same exact thing, but what I love so much is that we have one central mystery that ties in to all 3 books, even though books 2 and 3 kind of have their individual plot lines like driving the plot. We have that central mystery going on throughout the entire series. So I think that's why I love book 3 so much, just because I felt so close to all of these characters. I loved these curveballs that Holly Jackson threw at me in that last book that were just such great ties back to those first and second books. And I think that everything came together so well. Book 3 took a super dark and thrilling and exciting turn. I'm gonna be like fully reviewing it in my December wrap up because I just finished this one a couple of days ago, but it is the best YA book that I've ever read. So I really highly recommend this young adult series. I never thought that like I'd be putting young adult books on my top 10 or top 20 favorites of the year, but this series definitely deserves it. Lastly, we have number 11, the first runner-up to what will be my top 10 favorite books of the year. It's Penance by Kanae Minato. I honestly feel like this could be in my top 10. I feel like this could be my number 3 favorite book of the year. I did not know where to put this book, but after like listing everything out, I really feel at peace with it being number 11 and being my like number 1 honorable mention to those top 10. This is a story about revenge, and more specifically, a mother's revenge. The book begins with this group of young girls who are all friends, but one girl gets separated from her friends, and when she does, she is murdered very brutally. So the mother does not know how to cope with this information, and she blames the friends of her daughter. And she asks them, why, like, how could you let this happen? So after all of that, that's how the book just starts out. It just really starts out with a bang. After that beginning section, we follow each of the friends from that friend group all these years later, and we just pick up with where they are in their lives. Some are doing better than others, but all of them are living with this guilt of what happened to their friend so long ago. The mother of the deceased vowed to get revenge on these girls if they did not perform an act of penance for her or revenge from the mother. So we're picking up like kind of when the time is running out on the statute of limitations of the timeline when the mother gave them, or she was gonna like come out and get them. So we're seeing these women just be really upset and nervous about that. I've said it before, but Kane Minato is probably my favorite author. She only has 2 books that have been translated to English, Confessions and Penance. I just love both of these stories so much. Even though her plots are so well thought out, she does kind of tend to lean more on writing those characters and letting them drive the plot. I don't think I could love her anymore though. So that was my favorite book for this video. Minato might be showing up again in the top 10. I don't know, maybe. Obviously she is, but those are all of the books that almost made it onto that list. My almost favorite books of the year, and books that I still think you need to give a chance as soon as possible. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you again to Ana Luisa for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out the description down below. Click that link to shop their biggest sale of the year. Buy 1 piece of jewelry, get one 60% off. Thanks again for watching. I will see you very soon with another video. Until next time, bye.